Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shaja and these are the headlines. In Pakistan, the army has killed 4 terrorists while thwarting a raid on a post in the northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The military's media wing says 4 Pakistani soldiers embraced martyrdom during the encounter in South Waziristan district. Those martyred include Lance Naik Imran Ali, Sepoy Atif Jahangir, Sepoy Anisur Rahman, and Sepoy Aziz. The UN rights investigator says Security Council should consider sanctions, arm embargoes, and travel bans on Myanmar. In opening remarks to a special session of the Human Rights Council, Nada al-Nashif said more than 350 people in Myanmar, including officials, have been arrested since the 1st of February's military coup. Turkey says it will not back down from its purchase of the Russian S-400 defense systems despite U.S. sanctions. In an interview, a presidential spokesperson said Ankara wants to resolve issues with the NATO allies through dialogue. Russia says it is ready to cut ties with the European Union if the bloc hits Moscow with a painful economic sanctions. In the interview, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said if one wants peace, one must prepare for war. European Union foreign ministers are set to meet soon to decide upon curbs against Moscow over the arrest and jailing of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Australia's second most populous state of Victoria has entered a 5-day lockdown again after new COVID-19 cluster outbreak. Mexico has reported 10,000 new cases and more than 1,400 fatalities overnight. The nationwide death toll has crossed 171,000. Meanwhile, Pakistan registered 1,270 new infections and more than 33 COVID-19 fatalities in the last 24 hours, while the country's death toll has exceeded 12,000. Globally, the virus has claimed 2.36 million lives and infected over 107 million people. Bayern Munich beat Mexico's Tigres UANL 1-0 to win the Club World Cup title and earn their 6th trophy in less than 9 months. Benjamin Pavard scored in the 59th minute in the front of 12,000 spectators to secure the victory for Bayern. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. In Pakistan, the army has killed 4 terrorists while thwarting a raid on the post in the northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The military's media wing says 4 Pakistani soldiers embraced martyrdom during the encounter in South Waziristan district. Those martyred include Lance Naik Imran Ali, Sepoy Atif Jahangir, Sepoy Anisur Rahman, and Sepoy Aziz. The military said sanitization of the area is underway. Earlier on the 3rd of February, security forces killed 4 terrorists during an operation in North Waziristan district. The United Nations Rights Office says Security Council should reconsider the sanctions, arms and embargoes and travel bans on Myanmar. Deputy United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Nada al-Nashif says over 350 have been arrested in Myanmar since the military coup. In a special session of the Rights Council, al-Nashif said those detained include officials, activists, and monks. She said some of them face criminal charges on dubious grounds. United Nations rights investigator says photographic evidence shows Myanmar security forces have used live ammunition against protesters. Meanwhile, Myanmar's coup leader has called on the people to work with the military if they want democracy. Speaking on the country's Union Day, Senior General Ming-An Haling said only national unity can ensure sovereignty. Police clashed with protesters as hundreds of thousands of people joined nationwide demonstrations. 3 people were wounded when police fired rubber bullets to break up a crowd in the southeastern town of Malamin. Turkey says it will not back down from its purchase of the Russian S-400 defense systems despite U.S. sanctions. In an interview, a presidential spokesperson said Ankara wants to resolve issues with NATO allies through dialogue. Ibrahim Kalin warned against any expectations of a quick solution to the issue. He asserted that advances can be made if parties read the strategic picture the right way. Kalim also called on the United States to end support of the Kurdish militia that Ankara has designated as a terrorist group. Earlier, U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price urged Turkey not to retain the purchase. Russia says it is ready to cut ties with the European Union if the bloc hits Moscow with painful economic sanctions. In an interview, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said if one wants peace, one must prepare for war. The foreign minister said Russia does not want to isolate from the world, but it has to be ready. He said Moscow should be self-reliant in its economic sector to minimize the effect of a potential EU sanctions. EU foreign ministers are set to meet soon to decide upon the curbs against Moscow over the arrest and jailing of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. The European Parliament has called on member states to ban arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. A joint motion adopted by the Parliament called for the holding of all perpetrators of human rights violations in Yemen to account. It called for the European Union global rights sanctions regime to be deployed to impose targeted sanctions. The motion also recalled Germany's bans on arms sales to Saudi Arabia and Italy's ban to the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Brussels also welcomed Washington's decision to halt arms sales to Riyadh and to suspend transfer of F-35 jets to Abu Dhabi. Lawmakers said some other European countries are also planning to join the ban. Saudi Arabia has called on the United Nations Security Council to shoulder its responsibility towards the Houthi militias. In a letter, Riyadh's envoy to the United Nations, Abdullah al-Mulami, urged the council to hold the group accountable. The letter said continuing attacks on the kingdom are a flagrant violation of international law and Security Council resolutions. The envoy added that such acts by the Houthis continue to derail United Nations efforts to reach a comprehensive political solution in Yemen. Meanwhile, the Houthis claim they have yet again targeted the King Khalid Air Base near Khamis Mushahid with a ballistic missile. In a tweet, rebel spokesperson Yahya Saree said that they retaliated to the ongoing aerial and military escalation by the coalition forces. U.S. President Joe Biden has extended the national emergency for Libya by another year. Biden says the crisis remains an unusual and extraordinary threat to United States national security and foreign policy. In an executive order, he said that the foregoing circumstances and prolonged attacks have worsened the security situation. The United States president said measures are needed to protect against the diversion of Libyan state assets. Washington first declared an emergency for Libya in early 2011 during Muammar Gaddafi's government. The United States accused Gaddafi's regime of using violence against civilians and misappropriating Libyan state assets. We're taking you live to Islamabad, where the Foreign Office spokesperson is speaking.
The foreign ministers of Iceland and Chile called Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi with regard to their 2 mountaineers who went missing during the K2 expedition. The foreign minister apprised his counterparts on the efforts being made by Pakistan to locate the missing Icelander and Chilean mountaineers. These efforts include a number of search flights by Pakistan Army aviation helicopters amid challenging weather conditions over a treacherous terrain. The foreign minister reassured that no effort will be spared and all possible support will be extended in search and rescue operation. The efforts made by the government of Pakistan were acknowledged and greatly appreciated by the foreign ministers of Chile and Iceland. During the call, bilateral relations were also discussed, and it was agreed to remain engaged to enhance cooperation at the bilateral and multilateral fora. As part of the government's economic outreach initiative, the fourth virtual envoys meeting on economic diplomacy was organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The meeting, chaired by the Foreign Minister, focused on Europe, emphasizing the growing importance of geoeconomics in the international politics. The Foreign Minister highlighted economic diplomacy as a key component of modern diplomatic practice. Highlighting the government's continued efforts to attract foreign direct investment, the Foreign Minister noted that in the last 2 years, Pakistan had climbed 39 positions in the ease of doing business ranking. The United Nations has recently issued 27th report of its analytical and monitoring team. The report vindicates Pakistan's long-standing stance on threats posed to Pakistan and the region by groups like Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, Jamaat-ul-Ahrar, Hizb-ul-Ahrar, and their affiliates based in Afghanistan. Pakistan, in the past, has drawn attention of the international community to the support provided to TTP and its affiliates by the hostile intelligence agencies. Pakistan has also raised the issue of cross-border attacks carried out by the TTP on security forces deployed on its side of the border. Pakistan acknowledges UN monitoring team's efforts in exposing the hostile agencies' sponsored collusion of anti-Pakistan elements in Afghanistan. Pakistan expects that a dedicated effort will be launched by the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces and the Resolute Support Mission to neutralize this threat emanating from Afghanistan. Pakistan stands firm in its resolve to partner with the international community against the menace of terrorism. Now, coming to the situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the Kashmiris continue to remain under the inhuman military siege for over 18 months now. Extrajudicial killings of young Kashmiris in fake encounters and staged cordon and search operations is becoming a new normal in IIOJK. Even the bodies of Kashmiri Shohda are not handed over to their families for proper burial in violation of all humanitarian norms. In a new law, India has started charging the family members asking for dead bodies of their loved ones. Pakistan strongly condemns registration of a case under draconian laws against the father demanding the dead body of his son, Athar Mushtaq Wani, who was martyred along with 2 others during a fake encounter in Lavepura area of Srinagar on December 30th, 2020. As part of Pakistan's sustained diplomatic outreach, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has once again approached the President of the United Nations Security Council and the UN Secretary General to apprise them of India's continuing gross and systematic violations of human rights in IIOJK. The Foreign Minister underscored India's unlawful campaign to colonize the occupied territory and its belligerent and hostile actions against Pakistan, including persistent ceasefire violations which pose a serious threat to peace and security in South Asia. He also highlighted India's state sponsorship of terrorism and its global disinformation campaign against Pakistan. The Foreign Minister has called upon the Security Council to urge India to immediately lift the continuing military siege and rescind the illegal and unilateral actions in IIOJK. 2. Remove restrictions on fundamental freedoms including movement and peaceful assembly. 3. immediately release incarcerated Kashmiri political leaders and allow them to express the wishes of the Kashmiri people. 4. Free all arbitrarily and illegally detained Kashmiri youth. 5. Freeze and reverse the new domicile rules and property laws designed to change the demographic structure of IIOJK. 6. Remove the draconian laws enabling Indian occupation forces to continue human rights violations with impunity, including extrajudicial killings in fake encounters. And 7. Allow access to the occupied territory to the UN observers, international human rights and humanitarian organizations, observers, and the international media. Like every year, 5th February was observed all over the world to express solidarity with the Kashmiri people and in their just struggle for the right to self-determination. To express solidarity with our Kashmiri brothers and sisters, Prime Minister Imran Khan visited Kotli Azad Jammu and Kashmir and addressed a large public gathering. The Prime Minister urged the international community to hold India accountable for its crimes against humanity in IIOJK and take steps to resolve the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. The Prime Minister reaffirmed that Pakistan would remain unshakable in its solidarity with the Kashmiri people until they realize their inalienable right to self-determination in accordance with the relevant UNSC resolutions. President of Pakistan, Dr. Arif Alvi, also visited Azad Jammu and Kashmir and addressed a session of the AJK Legislative Assembly in Muzaffarabad. Addressing the Assembly, the President reiterated that Pakistan will always stand with the Kashmiris and will never leave them alone in their just struggle against the Indian oppression. The President also led a solidarity walk along with the AJK Prime Minister Raja Farooq Haider and the AJK President Sardar Masood Khan. To mark the Kashmir Solidarity Day, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi also led a huge rally from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Chairman Senate, the Speaker National Assembly, Governor Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, federal ministers, parliamentarians, officers and officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and people from all walks of life joined the rally. The Foreign Minister and the Foreign Ministry organized a photography and culture exhibition to express solidarity with the Kashmiris and to pay tribute to the resilience in their struggle for self-determination. Pakistan missions around the world also organized seminars, photo exhibitions, webinars, and engaged with the media, think tanks, parliamentarians, and policy influencers to highlight the egregious human rights violations taking place in IIOJK. In this regard, an important development was the legislative resolution passed by the New York State Assembly to make New York the first state in US to recognize 5th February 2021 as Kashmir American Day. The ambassadors of the OIC contact group on Jammu and Kashmir also met in New York on 5th of February 2021 to commemorate the Kashmir Solidarity Day. In his keynote address to the OIC contact group ambassadors, Foreign Minister Makhdum Shah Mahmood Qureshi thanked the OIC for effectively articulating the voice of the Islamic Ummah in solidarity and support with the Kashmiris. The OIC contact group of ambassadors reiterated OIC's unwavering support to the just cause of the Kashmiri people. And now, let me conclude this briefing by extending our warmest felicitations to the leadership, the government, and the people of our all-weather friend and strategic cooperative partner China on the occasion of the Spring Festival and Chinese New Year. I thank you very much. and I'm happy to take questions on these or other foreign policy related developments.
That was the Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry addressing the media. For more news in detail, you can stick around. We're going to take a short break. Welcome back. Australia's second most populous state of Victoria has entered a 5-day lockdown again after a new COVID-19 cluster outbreak. Mexico has reported 10,000 new cases and more than 1,400 fatalities overnight. The nationwide death toll has crossed 171,000. Globally, the virus has claimed 2.36 million lives and infected over 107 million people. More on the coronavirus pandemic in this report. The fight against COVID-19 is getting more complicated by the day. Brazilian officials say the variant identified in the country's Amazon region can be 3 times more contagious than the previous ones. Meanwhile, indigenous leaders have warned of evangelical missionaries turning Amazon villages against COVID-19 vaccines. In the United States, an official panel of experts examining the previous administration's pandemic policies says 40% of the deaths from COVID-19 could have been averted. President Joe Biden also slammed the Trump administration for not ordering enough doses and mobilizing people to administer vaccines.
It's no secret that the vaccination program was in much worse shape than my team and I anticipated. We were under the impression and been told that we had a lot more resources than we did when we came into office. While scientists did their job in discovering vaccines in record time, my predecessor, to be very blunt about it, did not do his job in getting ready for the massive challenge of vaccinating hundreds of millions of Americans.
British-Swedish biopharmaceutical company AstraZeneca says production of vaccine against the new COVID-19 variants can take 6 to 9 months. However, people who have received 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine showed strong immune responses against the Kent and South African variants. South Africa is set to start vaccinating millions against the local variant with the Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson vaccines. New Zealand will also start vaccinations for border staff from next Saturday.
This morning, I can confirm that New Zealand's first batch of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is set to arrive in New Zealand next week, well within our scheduled timeframe and ahead of previous expectations. That means we should be in a position, all things going to plan, to start vaccinating our border workers from next Saturday, the 20th of February.
Germany has decided to ban travel from the Czech Republic and Austria over the surge of infections in more contagious variants. Over in France, the British variant of COVID-19 now accounts for almost a quarter of all new infections. While Pakistan has recorded 33 deaths from COVID-19 overnight, pushing the toll to 12,218. The Health Ministry recorded 1,270 new infections over the past 24 hours. The ministry said out of 560,000 nationwide infections so far, more than 518,000 people have recovered. There are currently nearly 30,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. The ministry says over 1,700 patients are in a critical condition. In Pakistan, the multinational joint naval exercises are underway for the second day at the Northern Arabian Sea next to the port city of Karachi. The 7th edition of the drills, Aman 21, comprises of the navies from 45 countries. Navies from the United States, China, Russia, and Turkey are convening for the first time in a decade. The Aman series this year is titled as Together for Peace. Organized by Pakistan, the drills aim to foster international cooperation to fight piracy, terrorism, and other crimes. The drills will continue till the 16th of February. Pakistan's naval chief says Aman 21 will help bridge gaps between participating nations. Pakistan and Turkey are conducting a joint military exercise at the SSG headquarters in Terbela, some 105 kilometers northeast of Islamabad. More in this report by our correspondent Samira Khan.
The 3-week-long drills titled Ataturk 11 began earlier this week. Ankara and Islamabad have increased defense and military cooperation in recent years.
इन एक्सरसाइजेस का जो बुनियादी मकसद है वो ये है
The main purpose of these exercises is that the armies of both Pakistan and Turkey, who are fighting the scourge of terrorism, share the experience they have gained in this fight. So, when a joint exercise is held, we learn from the experiences of each other. Pakistan and Turkey have vast experience, especially the armed forces of Pakistan, including and in particular the special forces, in the fight against the scourge of terrorism. The experiences we have gained from this fight and the experiences our brotherly country Turkey and their special forces have gained in the fight against terror are exchanged when we hold these drills.
Pakistan Army says the joint drills will bolster ties between the two countries.
तुर्की चूँकि डिफेंस प्रोडक्शन में बहुत काम कर रहा है तो जो
Turkey is working a lot in defense production, so the different things they are producing and their use are things that we will keep in our focus. The aviation and special forces will share different drills with them. God willing, the armed forces of Pakistan and the special service group are always ready to face the scourge of terrorism.
The drills are focusing on counter-terrorism, cordon and search, fire and move techniques, and close-quarter battle. Helicopter rappelling, compound clearance, and free-fall operations are also part of the exercise. The significance of this 11th Ataturk special military exercise between Pakistan and Turkey is both the countries hold these exercises despite the prevailing pandemic, but keeping all the SOPs in place. Apart from this exercise, Pakistan is going to hold another 25 special military exercises with different countries in 2021. Sumaira Khan, Indus News, SSG Headquarter, Tarbela.
Several residents gathered in the Canadian city of Regina in solidarity with the farmers protesting in India. They urged Ottawa to speak out against the human rights violations during the demonstrations in India. Meanwhile, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi is going on a tour of Rajasthan today, where he will address a rally of the farmers. This comes as the farmer unions announced to intensify the movement in the coming days. A grand meeting and a public rally will be held in Maharashtra on the 20th of February. The farmers have been at the borders of Delhi for 77 days, demanding the rollback of the laws they say jeopardize their livelihoods. More than 200 protesting farmers have died during the demonstrations, including 4 who committed suicide. In the United States, at least 6 people have died and dozens more injured after a massive car pileup upon a Texas freeway. Officials say at least 130 cars were involved in the accident on the Interstate 35. They say 65 people are being treated in the hospital, and officials fear more fatalities. Firefighters said rescue efforts near Fort Worth are underway, with search ongoing for people in need of assistance. The crash site stretches for about 2.4 kilometers along the freeway. Police said ice appeared to have been a factor, but the investigation is still very preliminary. Britain's economy has suffered the biggest annual fallout in output since modern records began. Official data shows the economy is set to shrink sharply in early 2021 again due to a third COVID-19 lockdown. The figures showed that Britain's coronavirus-ravaged economy shrank 9.9% in 2020. The numbers, however, showed that the economy avoided heading back towards recession in the final quarter of the year. They revealed the country's GDP grew 1% between October and December versus the previous quarter. Britain has suffered the highest coronavirus death toll in Europe. It reimposed a lockdown to stop the spread of the virus, dealing a blow to its industries. European stocks have edged down as investors mull the efforts of the rapid spread of a new COVID-19 variant and its effectivity of vaccines against them. Frankfurt's DAX is leading losses, dipping over 0.5%. Italy's FTSE MIB has also declined over 0.5%. The pan-European stock 600 has slipped fractionally, with utilities and travel stocks dropping. London's FTSE and the CAC 40 in Paris too edged down marginally. Earlier shares in Australia and Japan struggled for gains due to low volume, as many markets in the region stayed closed for the Chinese Lunar New Year holiday. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.